During my 8 years traveling throughout every single corner of this state and meeting so many people of all different ages and experiences, there is one story I will never forget. It was a man who was in his late 40s. He grew up in Port Angeles. He was one of Congressman Kilmer's classmates. And he told me the story of Port Angeles before the Spotted Owl decision, how that community was alive, its schools were alive, its economy was alive, the communities were thriving with resources. And then overnight, when the Spotted Owl decision came down, everything changed. He literally knew the very next day, walking to his grade school, whose family has jobs and whose didn't. Overnight, millions of acres of forest were preserved to ensure the Spotted Owl survived. Thousands of jobs lost overnight, and as the months passed following the decision, he witnessed his classmates struggling, going without meals, losing their homes, facing increased abuse and addiction at home, and his classmates following suit, where they numbed their pain with addiction and eventually dropped out. And the data today reflects the decisions of the past and how they played out. Today, these communities continue to have increased poverty, child homelessness, addiction, and domestic violence. Indeed, generational poverty has set into these communities. I've spent my entire career, over 30 years, in Washington State working to protect our environment and critical endangered species, orcas, salmon, spotted owl, marble murrelets, and more. And it is critical we do our part to protect our forests, our waters, our threatened endangered species. And no part of my comments today are saying we should not. We must, our lives depend on it. But we have a responsibility to fix the mistakes of the past and not repeat them. It is not just our legal responsibility, it is our moral one too. First, legally, we have placed encumbrances on the lands that belong to these communities without just compensation. Think about that for a moment. Most of you own property. Imagine if overnight you lost half of your property, half of your home, half of your land, half of your income. That is what happened to Wahkiakum, Pacific, Clallam, Skamania, and Jefferson. We didn't pay them for those lands that we set aside for preservation. Some of these counties, the lands represented 80% of their operating revenues, and overnight it was shrunk to 40%, with no backfill for the revenue they lost annually. You are all facing a budget deficit you must solve. Imagine if you suddenly lost 30 to 40% of your budget, not around 13%. Not for 1 or 2 budget cycles, but in perpetuity. These funds supported the basic services these counties provide: fire, police, teachers, education services, public health, housing, human services. Gutted overnight, never repaid, and never restored. At best, we did it with no understanding and recognition of the impacts to the people. At worst, we did it with no compassion, no care, or concern for the wreckage we left behind. For the last decade, I've heard the terms just transition, equity, environmental justice throughout the bills and budgets of this legislature. And this legislature has made massive improvements and investments to address the inequities, the injustices, to repair the mistakes of the past, and support the outcomes of those who have been harmed. And that is the work in front of us as we stay focused on investing in encumbered lands. We literally gutted these communities from inside out. We did it over 27 years ago. And we need to continue to repair the mistakes of our past and do it in a way that takes care of both place and people. That is what the Encumbered Lands Program does. It helps us buy forest lands to keep them forested and protect the environment. And it provides the most essential critical funding for these communities, not to just barely survive, but to actually start to thrive. Thank you for your work, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Chair Thuringer. I've sat in this committee for many, many years and heard a lot of testimony, and I would challenge, and I'm saddened that every seat isn't filled to hear that. I have probably never gotten emotional in a capital budget meeting. It's not very emotional committee. And that was something that I've experienced. I have watched kids go hungry sitting next to me. My class is half. I go to the same, we have 100 years in the same school, my family, and it is less than half since the closing of our mill. Yet I'm watching the same forest burn up. You said things that probably many people can't hear. And with the way that our representation is, most legislators come from areas, every single one that you described, communities, don't have the 50 legislators from the Puget Sound fighting for them. They only have 1 or 2 voices here. And when you watch people say you'll be re-educated, you just have to drive 3 hours to Spokane every day to get re-educated. And then you can learn a different skill. And I will tell you, when I was a staffer and another community lost its mill, I will never forget the call where a man said, I did everything right. I did everything right, and I'm losing my house. I have 2 girls in high school. I'm losing our car, and I don't know how to feed them. And the only thing I did is I went to work, I got married, I supported them, I worked in the forests, and now I have nothing and nowhere. Can you help me? And he was crying on the phone. And I had never heard a man with that much strength cry to me and ask me anything. I did everything right. I paid my taxes. I need one thing to help me. And there was nothing I could do when I took that call. Nothing. There was no program. There was nothing we had for the state. So yes, I know, and you said those words perfectly. So Commissioner, thank you for, if this is the last time I hear you speak in public, we should clip this and play it over and over again. Because I feel like nobody heard those voices, and those children did go hungry in school, and those people lost everything. And now my district has the highest suicide rate in the state of Washington, highest poverty rate in the state of Washington, and our life expectancy just came back from the Census Bureau, 13 years less than the state average if you are born in my zip codes. That's disgusting. But thank you. Thank you for saying it, because it wasn't that way when I was growing up. Thank you.